Hey guys, Stef here. Stef's top 10 rules of development. By top 10 rules, now I've discussed these things over the last couple of years, over hundreds of YouTube videos. I've touched off on some of these things. So I decided in this video, I was going to put it all together, the top 10 rules, so you have an easy reference. If this video is popular, I get a lot of views, I may go into more detail. So I'm just going to do a quick overview in this video. Rule number 1, concentrate on the fundamentals. When you're first learning, concentrate on your fundamentals because you're going to get there much more quickly, meaning you're going to get to becoming a professional developer much more quickly if you concentrate on your fundamentals of programming and coding, etc. And if you want to become a better developer, learn your fundamentals well. You will become a better developer. Number 2, learn on a need-to-nerd basis. This simple rule here, there's a lot in there. Basically, as a real-world developer, you're not going to know everything. And what you're going to find in your career, especially the first 3 to 5 years, you're going to do a lot of learning. So you have to understand that there's so many things out there. Node.js, Python, Django, Vue.js, React, etc., etc. I could go on for half an hour talking about all of the technologies that are out there. And it can be overwhelming for a lot of people. Say, well, what do I need to know? Do I need to know all this? No, you don't. You need to know your fundamentals, and then you jump into the real world, you start doing jobs, and if you need to build a NoSQL database, then you build a NoSQL database for that project. If you need to use PHP Laravel, then you learn Laravel, etc., etc. Now, when you're learning your fundamentals, you're going to have to pick a particular concentration. You may decide, I'm going to be a web stack guy with PHP, or I'm going to be a web stack guy with Python, and then from there you branch out. But understand need to nerd. It basically means that as a developer, you don't have to know everything, but you have to expect that you're going to learn as you go, which is normal. And as long as you got your fundamentals down, this is easy. Number 3, faster write time is more important than faster run time. Faster write time, meaning languages that are faster to write with, meaning languages that are nimble, JavaScript, Python, PHP, Ruby, etc. These languages, even though they don't run as fast as, say, C++ or Java, but because they're so much easier to write, so much faster to write, they're going to win. Now, don't get me wrong, Java's huge, but because computers are getting so much faster, because these languages like PHP and Python are becoming optimized or slowly getting faster and faster, but more because the hardware is just getting so powerful. The difference between the faster to write languages that run slower versus the slower to write languages like Java or C++ that run much faster, the faster to write languages and tools will win. For example, with regards to mobile development, I've been telling people for a while now that non-native, hybrid, or web-based mobile apps are going to beat overall native development, even though native has more power, runs faster, etc., etc. In most cases, Flutter may be the exception there. Faster writing languages or frameworks are going to win because they're faster, because speed at runtime is becoming less and less important in most situations because of hardware and because of library and language optimization. So favor faster write time languages and technologies. Number 4, open is better than closed with regards to all tech. When you're looking at tech stacks, you don't want to get into proprietary stuff. So for example, let's see, recent example of closed getting killed versus open. Well, let's look at databases. Now, a SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server is a very powerful SQL-based database versus MySQL. MySQL is by far more dominant. Why? Because it was open, it was free. Free typically wins. And same thing with IDs, etc., etc., etc. So I tend to favor open versus closed. This is not always the case, and there's different ways of looking at open versus closed. For example, Windows became dominant because Microsoft just made developing for Windows super cheap and easy versus what Apple was doing at the time. I think Apple has since woken up, but they being Microsoft, opened up Windows to be an easier to work with platform. That's one of the main reasons why they dominated so well. Anyway, I can go on forever with number 4, but I'll stop. Number 5, Market forces are always greater than tech/nerd advantages. I've talked about this in recent videos. When you're looking at technology, you have to, which ones to concentrate on. Look at the market forces. You may think that Delphi is the greatest language ever, but nobody uses Delphi. You may think Objective-C is better than Swift for iOS development, but everybody uses Swift. Why? Because it's easier. It's easier, but also, whatever reasons, let me back up, whatever reasons a technology has gained popularity, doesn't matter. All that matters is what the market tells you, because that's where the jobs are going to be, that's where the demand is going to be. So PHP, for whatever reasons, became the dominant server-side programming language. Even though a lot of people think that Python is better better overall, nonetheless, for every Python web job, there's probably 10,000 PHP web jobs. I don't know what the real ratio is. Could be 1,000 to 1. It could be 500 to 1. I don't know. Point is, when you're choosing a technology, don't get caught up necessarily on the technical advantages that you see. Because these days, by the way, frameworks, languages, with some exceptions, they're all pretty good nowadays. The technology field, the IT technology field has really matured over the last 20 years. They're all pretty good. And so pay attention to market forces. They're more important than some tech advantage you may perceive in a particular language or framework, with some exceptions. It's job dependent, but I'm just talking overall. All right, number 6, don't jump on first generation technology for production projects. Yeah, early adopters usually get it. They take it on the chin. I never jump with the latest libraries or the latest technology, because there's always going to be problems. For example, when we were rebuilding Studio Web 4, started about a year and a half ago, at the time, Node was still having problems with its package management. It's still a bit of a mess, but still a bit of a Wild West. I'm sure it's since cleaned up and matured. But compared to stable PHP Laravel, I decided, you know what, Node looks cool. Node came in second place. I was about to do Node, but then I looked at it was still in flux because it's still a very new technology, relatively speaking. So I said, you know what, we're going to do it PHP. I don't jump in first generation tech typically. There are some exceptions, especially for production projects. If you're experimenting and so forth, hey, why not, But in the early stages of any new tech, there's going to be issues. So be prepared to have to handle those issues. So I never do it personally, but just a word of warning there. Number 7. Simple code is superior code. When you're writing code, you want to strive to keep your code as simple as possible. As simple as possible. The best developers write simple, easy to understand code that even your cat can understand. If your cat can read your code and understand what's going on, then you are the world's best coder. So keep your code simple, and people will appreciate that. You appreciate that when you go back 6 months later and you have simple, easy to understand code, as opposed to some complex stuff that nobody can understand, Okay, number 8. Code should be self-describing. This is related to number 7, of course. When you read code, the variable names, the method names, the function names, etc., should be self-describing. I talked about this in my basic web stack course, but self-describing code is very important. Long-winded variable and function names should tell you something about what the function is doing. You use comments in your code if necessary. Comments are just little notes that developers leave behind, but you shouldn't have to leave too many comments if you have well-structured, simplified, self-describing code. Okay? Number 9. Code should be fine-grained. Again, it goes to simplicity. Instead of having a function that does 5 different things, a function should do one thing. Instead of having a method or an object that does 10 different things, it should do one thing. Fine-grained just means very specialized chunks of code that are easy to understand. You don't have code that does, okay, if this happened, that does, and this, and then the code will do this and order a pizza, and this, you get a microphone, You don't want to do that. You want a very simple, fine-grained, F-I-N-E, grained code. That's a way to have cool code that people are going to love you for. All right, number 10. Don't marry a language or framework. There we go. Don't marry a language or framework. You have to be ready to dump a technology, to change a framework, to go to a different language, depending on the needs of the job or the needs of the marketplace. You may think that VB is fantastic. I love VB, but nobody cares about VB anymore. It's all about the web now. You may think that Objective-C is the best programming language ever, but everybody's moved on to Swift when it comes to iOS development. Move on to Swift. Don't marry tech. What you're going to find now, especially at this stage, I'm recording this in summer 2019, all these technologies are pretty good these days. You'll find that Swift is better here, PhoneGap might be better there, et cetera, whatever. So they're very neck and neck, all these technologies. So you don't want to get too caught up in, in camps, technology camps. Like people, say, oh, I like Android and iOS sucks and vice versa and this and that. Whatever works, things change. I've gone from being a pure Windows user. I've done Linux. I've went over to, I liked Windows 10. I didn't go to Windows 8, but I went to Windows 7. Well, from Windows 7, to 10. And now most of the time I'm on Mac OS, blah, 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 blah. I switch from different camera systems. Whatever works, don't marry technology. Try to be as objective as possible and choose the best technology at that time or for the needs of the project. I hope that makes sense. There you go. My top 10 rules of development. I just covered them. Let me know what you think below. And if you like this, like the video. If you don't like it, give me 2 thumbs down. Show me how much you hate my stuff. And let me know if you want me to do more detailed breakdown of these 10 rules. Bye-bye.